When we added the add action, we had to go and add the validation stuff to the book object. And at this point, updating the edit action is going to be a little easier because we've already done most of the work with the add action. So let's go ahead and fix our edit action that we've coded in Module 3. When we stubbed in this method, we created a new book form, and we had a section here called form bind with our book object. And we had to comment this out because we didn't have our book object yet. So I'm going to go ahead and start by uncommenting this. But we don't have our book referenced yet. So we're going to use our table gateway to actually get our book based off of the ID. The way that we get the ID is to pull that off of the request params coming in from our route. Because remember, that is a segment on our route that we set up. So a couple things here with the code that you may want to update in your own system. First of all, if this ID comes back with 0, you probably want to redirect over to your add action and show the add form. So that's just kind of some validation that you could put in. And you could also check to make sure that the book that's returned is a valid book and that we found it in the database. For now, for this particular demo, we're just going to assume that the book and the ID come in and are valid objects. We then instantiate our book form, we bind the book data into that form, and then we set the form's attribute to edit. All of that work essentially displays the book data on the form for editing. But we still haven't processed what happens when we save this. So we need to fill in our if block here when we're posting back with book data. So this portion is going to be very similar to our add block. First thing we're going to do is set our input filter, which we set up with our add action. We're then going to set the data from the form that was pushed in off the post. We check to make sure that it's valid, and then we go ahead and save the book using our book table gateway. And last, we want to go ahead and redirect. Now obviously, some other additional enhancements you could add to this and the add action would be to check if the form wasn't valid. You would want to go back and redisplay the form showing an error message with possibly the fields that need to be addressed with validations. Really, the main difference between the edit action and the add action is this line right here, where we bind the book object to our form. If you remember, in our add action, we actually called the exchange array method down in here so that we could get the data from the new book object off of the form and place correctly on the book attributes. So this is not doing that. Essentially, that book's already been bound to the form. We input and validate that form, and then at that point, when we set this data, all of that data gets transferred directly over to our book, and we can save that book at that point. To test out if our edit functionality is working, we can go back to our application and edit one of our book entries. So I'm going to go ahead and edit the one that I just added. You'll notice that it brought the book data in and set it in our appropriate fields. So perhaps I want to change some of the names or titles of the books. I can go ahead and edit those and save those. And assuming this form is valid, this should take me back to my book list because that's where we're redirecting after a valid save. You'll notice we got back here and my author information has changed. And as you go into each book, you'll notice that the route up here is passing in a different ID. That's the ID we're looking up. And then we're grabbing that book from the getBook method, and it's populating the edit form with the different data. So no matter which record I go in, it should look up that correct ID and data.